In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can correct a UV within 3D-Coat and at the same time have all our paint layers update. So you may find at some point when you're working that you've been working on part of a model and not noticed that you've got overlapping or poor UV layout in a certain area, and it didn't show up during the painting phase. So I've got a situation here where I've got this model, and if you can see down here in this zone, you can see where I've got some issues going on, and on this side here. And if we start to investigate this, we can see that we have some issues not on the painting but on the actual UV. So I'll go over here to the UV, and these are the leg shells and these are the bottom of the feet. So the issue is on one of these top shells here. So let's select this one and zoom in on our UV, and we can see the issue here. We have these overlapping UVs on the toes, and if we move over to the other side, you can see we've got the same thing. So during the unwrap process, it hasn't separated these toes out quite enough, and this overlap is causing a baking issue as well as painting any further painting issues that we have. Now if you look at the underside of the foot here on these ones are okay. The toes are nicely separated out and we've got a good even distribution there with no bake errors. So how are we going to fix this? Well, we could re-UV the whole section, but actually the issue is just local to the toe area here. And I've got some red paint here and I've just made a quick new layer. And if I just go over the top of this now and start to paint here, you can see that when I paint on this side, I start to paint on this side as well. And let me undo my symmetry on there, and I'll just turn off symmetry just to show that it's nothing actually to do with symmetry. So I repeat the same thing without symmetry. You can see that I'm getting this painting on this side when I actually have only painted on this one. And that's to do with that overlap of the polys that we saw in the UV. And if I zoom in on this area a little closer, you can see that I'm painting on one toe and it's spreading over because the UVs are overlapping, and that paint mark is spreading over to the other toe as well. So I need to really figure out a way not to redo the whole thing, but maybe just change this area locally in the UV. When we are inside the UV room, we need to have our mark seams selected on here, because what I want to do is I want to access these tools across the top here that we can see. And there's some really good tools here that we can use. Currently islands is selected, so when I click on anything it's going to select the whole island in the UV workspace. So I don't want that one for now. What I want to do is I want to use faces to start with, and I'm going to deselect that previous selection, and I'm going to start to select by holding down Shift, and if you notice when I hover over a face it highlights yellow, and that means that one's selected. So it can be a little bit difficult, especially when we've got these overlapping here, to select the correct one. So now I've got that one, I'm going to select these ones here, and if I want to speed this process up a little bit, I'm just going to hit the E key on the keyboard, choose lasso, hold Shift down. So I'm just going to drag a marquee around these ones here, and any ones that I don't want selecting, maybe these ones at the top, I can hold Alt and then just drag over the top of the ones I don't want. So with those ones isolated now or selected, you see this little gizmo comes up. Now the gizmo kind of takes a central position on this selection. So I can't, for example, move the pivot to here and pivot this whole toe outwards. I have to do it kind of like here, and it would be more useful for it to be a little bit higher up. But all I'm going to do now is start to move. Now you can see here I've missed one, so I need to undo that and just reselect that. Get back to my brush and reselect. So let's repeat that now. So I'm going to just pivot this one around and I'm going to move it to the side here. Now immediately you can see that this causes me some big UV issues because it's screaming red and blue here at me, which means this is going to stretch in your texture. What I'm aiming for here is a neutral color like these colors here, or a very muted color like we've got here of blues, very pale blues and very pale pinks. That's okay. But these very dark colors mean I'm going to get a lot of stretching and pinching on my UV. But that's fine for now. All we're doing at the moment is just making sure that we're creating a little bit of separation. So whilst that's done, let's drop that selection and go over to the other side and just do the same thing. And then we're going to move this one out now, just to give a little bit more space. So let's move that one over there and drop the selection. Okay, so we've done that, we've separated them out, but now we've created another issue, which is these areas here. And that's where these other tools come in. So the first thing we can do on here is, again, we can use the tweak setting here. And the tweak allows us to move a face, an edge, or a point within the UV space. You must have your brush selected on this for it to work. So now I can start to manipulate these individual points rather. And my aim here is to get that neutral color. This is quite time consuming, but in certain scenarios, you would have to go in and tweak in these at this level of detail. But there's a quicker way of doing it. And I'm going to now choose the brush tool here. And the brush tool acts exactly like any sculpt brush or paint brush, only on UVs, because the brush tool allows me not only to move these UVs, but it also allows me to smooth by holding shift down on the keyboard, which is the exact same function that happens within any other tool, with any other brush tool in any of the other rooms. So now if I start to smooth this out, it starts to relax the UV for me. You'll notice here I've got this preserve edges. So this will preserve the edge that I have created, the outline, if you like, of the UV shell. If that was unchecked, it would use the space available to use that, but I'm constraining it to this position that I've got here. So by making the brush larger, so I'm just right clicking and dragging to the side, I'm able to influence more of these polygons inside of my UV to smooth this out. Okay, so that's not too bad either. Now there is one other method that we can use, and I'm just going to go back to faces here, and I'm just going to actually we'll try this on the other side. Let's go over to this side. So I'll select these faces around here. So I'm being a little bit more local with my selection here, and I'm targeting not only the stretched ones, but a couple of the ones around it as well. That will be okay for now. And with those ones selected, I'm going to go over to my menu on the left side where it says selected, and I'm going to choose relax. And that will relax all the selected polygons in one go. Now, if I had selected the whole of this using islands, the whole of the island, it would have relaxed the whole island again. But if your UV space is very tight, for example, I've still got a bit of room on this UV for that to relax and maybe change the whole shape of this a little bit more. And it may even do a better job than what I've got now. But if your UV space is tight, then maybe it's better to do things more locally and just relax the geometry in the affected areas. So with that selected, I can still go over to the brush, for example, here. Let's reduce my brush size now because I don't need it quite that large. Hold Shift and then just relax the selected polygons now within there. Now you can see I'm getting a lot of pinching around here. So this is where I was talking about before, where the tweak tool comes into play, and we will have to just manually give these a little bit more room here and try to even out that color distribution as much as we can. And then I can come back. I'll just drop the selection for now. I'll go back to my brush and I'll just try to relax, just tap the surface. I'll just try to relax that surface a little bit more just to reduce that down. So now I've got the toes separated out. So once that's done, I'm not going to do the other one. It's exactly the same process to do the other one, but we've already demonstrated what we're doing here on this particular foot. So with that done, all I need to do now is just apply that UV set. So it will just update everything. Now remember, I've created artwork and painting on layers inside of the paint room. And all of that is baked to the previous UV. So 3D-Coat doesn't understand at the moment that I've made changes to this UV. And once I click apply, it's going to say, are you sure you want to make these changes? And there we go. So I'll say, okay. And what it's doing now is it's changing that UV shape. It's also going to change the paintwork that I've done inside of the paint room and update all this information that I've painted to fit onto this new UV layout. So let's go and check that out. It'll give me another warning now that something changed in the UV room. And this is my last opportunity really to cancel that. So let's say okay, because I want this change to happen. And now what's going on is it's starting now to change all my paint layer information on here. Okay, that's now done. Let's go back. And there's my new one over there. And the beauty of this is that you can see all of that information has been updated. So if I go over to normals, for example, you can see that it's updated all my normal map information on there. Now, one thing you may expect is that maybe it changed those errors that were on the paint object that we saw. It can't do that. It can't update all the files and the normal maps, etc., because all that information was baked previously on the UV with the error on it. So it's not going to do that. That's a case of now going in and changing and clearing up the bake errors from the previous UV layout. So for example, if I turn off these layers here, and I'll just keep this layer showing, you can see that it's updated the UV, but it just repositioned the bake errors in the new UV area here. So let's have a look at the color one over here, and I think it's this one here that it's showing there. So this is a case now of me going in and just making a start and just painting out those errors. So in this case, I would go in with a brush, an airbrush on here. I just want to do color on here, and I can just start to manually paint out that particular bake error from the previous UV, and obviously just make a better job than this, but just paint that out, go over to the other side and do that. So this is a much quicker way just to correct local issues. And remember, this is kind of like an awkward area anyway, and that's where you normally would get these sort of overlaps where the algorithm for UV generation just had a little bit of trouble with that particular area. So I've already made a tutorial on how to correct bake errors, and this is essentially exactly the same process as that video. I'll leave a link to that video in the description as well. So now one last test. Let's bring back all our colors here. Let's change this back to a normal map by choosing normal map, and I'm just going to lock that layer down just so I don't accidentally paint over it. So once that's locked down, I'm going to use this new layer here, and let's repeat what I did last time. So I'll choose that red color again. So I'll create a new layer at the top here. I have my brush selected as I did before, and I will just start to paint on this area here, and you can see that that isn't translating over to the other side anymore. Let's try this side where we've got this rather large gash here of this bake error. Let me paint on that side, and you can see it's not overlapping. So now I've got independence when working fully on these toes, and the UV overlap isn't affecting that work that I do. So now all I do is I go ahead and repeat the same thing on the other side. That's just a bit of a time saver in case you have made mistakes on your UV and you do need to correct something post paint work that you've done on there. So I hope you found that useful. See you next time.